The Tree That Ran Away by Henry Beston. Chapter 4. Home with Presents. The tree traveled on aimlessly all day, now turning down this road, now turning down that. When evening came, it happened to be in a rather lonely place. It stepped to one side of the road, and in a few seconds its roots were once more deep in the earth, and its sturdy brown legs were resting. The night had become rather wild. A wind had risen, and now the black clouds raced across the face of the moon. At one moment the landscape would be almost as bright as day, and the next moment one could not see 10 feet through the darkness. An owl passed by. "I find this very confusing," it complained in a small, shrill voice. The tree felt restless and did not sleep well. For the first time it began to be a little homesick for its own hillside and the animals which it knew. Far off, a clock in some unseen tower struck midnight. Hardly had the sound died away when the muffled whir of an automobile was heard coming down the road. The tree was wondering who could be driving so late when, to its astonishment, it heard the car stop right under its own branches. The night at this moment was dark, and, peer as it would, the tree could see nothing but some small shining spots which it took to be the whites of eyes. It was trying to count them when the moon came out, and it saw 7 men in black cloaks and black hats wearing masks on their faces, and black gloves on their hands, getting out of a large old-fashioned open automobile, painted black and without headlights. "Hist," muttered the man, who appeared to be the leader. "Do you hear anything?" The 6 others listened. "Only the wind, Captain," they replied. "The pursuit has been outdistanced." "Ah," said the captain, "as sure as my name is Whiskerandos Muggins, you are wrong. I hear the pursuit, and we are being overtaken." The others began to shake in their black shoes and socks. "Oh, Captain," they cried, "please, please tell us what we ought to do." The clouds crossed over the moon, leaving all in darkness once more. "I think," said the captain, "we ought to hide our loot somewhere. Then, if we are overtaken, we will say that we are not robbers, but gentlemen riding out to take the night air. And who can then say that we aren't what we pretend to be?" "What wonderful ideas you have, Captain Whiskerandos," cried all the robber band in chorus. "But isn't it a shame to lose the loot after the trouble we took to rob it and the strain of being pursued for nearly a month?" "I've thought of that," said their leader. "Trust Captain Whiskerandos Muggins to think of everything. We will come back later and get our valuables, when the pursuers have ridden off home again." "Hooray, hooray for the captain!" shouted the robber band, much relieved. It was soon decided to hide the things in the branches of the nearby pine, since its needles were so thick that no one passing by would see them. The robber chief himself climbed into the lower branches and put bundles and purses in all the crotches, and hung a few pearls and diamond necklaces over the twigs. The pine wriggled a little, still feeling ticklish, but the captain never noticed in his excitement, especially as the tree was swaying in the wind already. When the last piece of loot was in place, he climbed down. "Now, men," he said briskly, "it's up and away, come who may. We are innocent gentlemen today." The robbers all laughed politely. "Put your masks in your pockets, and I don't think we need the gloves," the tree heard Captain Muggins remark. And then the old engine coughed and spluttered and took hold, and the tree saw the car disappear down the road during a fine burst of moonlight. The moment the moon went under, the tree began running in the opposite direction. 1 or 2 of the jeweled necklaces joggled loose and fell, but the tree ran on. There were plenty of other necklaces. "What will the robbers say when they come back?" it wondered. "They won't think so much of Captain Whiskerandos Muggins' fine plan then, I fancy." The pine was so excited that it ran on and on without feeling the least bit tired. This time it knew where it was going. It was going home. It ran all through the moon-dappled night. It ran through the rosy dawn. It ran through the bright morning with its clearing skies. And just before noon, it reached its own hillside, and with a sigh of contentment settled itself to rest. But this time it took a position a little higher up in the pasture, so that it might look over the hill any time it cared to. Everything made a great fuss over the tree's return. There were so many rabbits and birds and sheep about that there seemed to be a regular meeting. The gnome came too, under his parasol, and said, "So you're back?" in a friendly way, and never added, "I thought you would be." At first the cow wouldn't come, but she did when the tree promised not to stir. "You gave me such a start," she explained, and then added kindly, "But I know you didn't mean to." The squirrel came with her family and settled in the old hole. "You were mean to go off without us," she said. "We had to walk home. But it's something to be able to say that you live in the only tree that ever ran away, so I intend to forget what you did to us and say no more about it." In the afternoon, Jerubbaal and Mehitable climbed the hill to welcome back the wanderer. The tree waited until they were under its boughs, and then shook loose a purse which nearly fell on Jerubbaal's head. "What a big cone!" the farmer exclaimed. "Why, Mehitable, it isn't a cone. It looks like a purse." It was a purse, filled with gold pieces, a gold thimble, and half a dozen rubies. The farmer and his wife could scarcely believe their eyes. They looked, and they counted, and they put up a notice in the post office asking if anyone had lost any property. But the only person who paid any attention to the notice was a neighbor who was looking for a heifer which had strayed and knew nothing about lost purses. So Jerubbaal and Mehitable kept the purse and put up a new barn and painted their farmhouse and got lawn chairs and bought a cottage organ and a new car and wore fine clothes to church and made presents to people who needed them and sent for a green parrot, a thing Mehitable had always longed for. On special holidays, like birthdays and Christmases, they always walked up to the tree in the pasture, and the tree always shook them down a present. Sometimes a watch, or a mother-of-pearl opera glass, sometimes a silver teapot or a shaving mug painted with pink roses. For the pine tree never left the pasture again. It was quite content, for now it could see over the hill, and, if the birds and the animals talked about their adventures, the tree itself at last had its own adventures to tell about, much more exciting than any of theirs.